and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be doing an album review. I'm going to be taking a look at this record here. It is Voulez-Vous by Abba. So yes, I'll just be doing my usual thing in this video, giving a bit of background information about the album, then showing you my vinyl copy of it here, and then looking at each of the album songs in detail. Okay, so this album was Abba's 6th studio album. It was released on the 23rd of April in 1979. It was the follow-up to the 1977 album, The Album, and like it was, and like that was arguably like the peak of like their like success. Like like pretty much every single like they were releasing like was getting like to like #1, like very much like at like the kind of like the top of the tree, like off like the kind of like the pop stars like off like the day really. So this album was originally set for a Christmas 1978 release. However, its sessions proved rather difficult, like with like some early recordings, like recordings from March of '78, that rejected, and like only two songs, like which they thought were album worthy were completed like by like the October. So some of these rejected tracks included later B-side, a track called Love Light. You also had a song called Dream World, of which elements like would be incorporated into like Does Your Mother Know, and then also Just a Notion as well was quite notable, as that was later reworked onto the album Voyage, which came out a couple of years ago. So in order to kind of like fill a gap like kind of thing between like their last single like from January like of like '78 and like Take a Chance on Me, the group agreed to release like one of like the songs that they'd be working on like as a non-album single, Summer Night City. This was quite different like for Abba, very much of kind of almost Phil Spector-esque kind of production, very kind of wall of sound, like very like in like your face kind of track. And this is one of my favourite like Abba singles. I think it's brilliant, like, but like at the time like its reception like was slightly muted like for like an Abba single, like it stalled at number 5 in like the UK charts. So the sessions for this album continued at a snail's pace, with kind of like writing sessions, with like many writing sessions proving to be like unproductive, and like kind of like Benny like at like the time worried that like he said that like we'll have no idea like when it's finished, like when referring to the album. Like also brewing away like at this time was some tension like within like the band. So you had like Bjorn and Agnetha like divorced like divorced like at like the start like of like 1979. However, kind of like once like they've kind of said that once like they kind of formalized, sort of like they kind of formally split, that kind of sort of freed up some of like the personal tension, and their productivity kind of like took off like after that basically. So like at like the start like of like '79, like they kind of went on like a writing holiday to the Bahamas and basically finished up like the majority like of the album. So upon its release, it got a mostly positive critical reception, although there was a bit of backlash against the kind of slightly more disco-y kind of vibe like of the album. Commercially, it was a success. This album got to #1 across Europe and number 19 like in like America, which was a bit of a backward step for them compared to the album, which got to number 14. However, in the UK, singles-wise, I mean, like I'm not going to say this was a flop or anything, like, but this album actually had no #1 singles on it, which was a first, like, for like an ABBA album. Like, so like every album since the self-titled ABBA album from 1975, or like actually I'd even say that like Waterloo, like to be fair, like had like a #1 single on it, like in like the UK. This one, unfortunately, all of the singles missed out like on like the top spot. So anyway, I want to show you my vinyl copy of it. Well, I say my vinyl copy. This is actually like my mum's like old copy of it here. But it's still it's not in great condition, sort of kind of sleeve wise. But the record like actually plays surprisingly well, surprisingly well to be fair. So got an inner sleeve here with all of the lyrics, and then this is on the Epic label there, or like an orange Epic label. So yeah, that's the record looked at. Okay, so I'll now go over each of the album songs in detail. I'll score each track out of 10, and then use those scores to give us a overall percentage marking for the album. So it starts starts off with As Good As New, which I think is the strongest track on the album. It's a really well produced song, this great kind of structure to the song as well. Begins with these kind of synthesized strings and that. Maybe sounds a bit dated, but I really like it though. And then suddenly you get this very strong disco beat comes in, like on like the verses, and then the chorus kind of slows down, like all the instruments drop out. So it's got this very kind of give and take kind of momentum like to like the track, which I think like works like really well. Like Agnetha takes like the lead vocal and does a sterling job on here. Plus you've got a key change like at the end, which is kind of just like the cherry like on like the cake and like sort of thing. So a great song for me. Yeah, for me, one of my favourite like ABBA songs. I think should have been a single personally. It was issued though like as a single like in some South American countries, and like reached I think #1 like in like Mexico. Like however, like yeah, like wasn't released again like the UK. But I think if this had been released, I think it would have been like a #1 hit, or like I got like at like the very least a big single, because it is a great song. Okay, and then the next track up is the title track, Voulez-Vous, which is a kind of, very disco-infused sort of song. This was the first ABBA track, notably, to be recorded outside of their native Sweden, like with like the backing track to this, recorded in a Miami studio using musicians from a disco outfit called Foxy. So it's got a completely different feel to a lot of like other like ABBA songs, because they're not using their kind of traditional kind of studio band. I mean, it's a very good song, this, I think. It's like, very upbeat, very danceable, this one here, but also some slightly darker touches to it as well, particularly like the verses and like the production. It's a slightly mysterious kind of sound. I guess it's perhaps a bit of a precursor to like The Visitors in terms of its like production style, like I'd say. But I would say the song itself has never been a massive favourite of mine. Like I will listen to it like on the album, but I think it goes on for far too long, certainly in like this album version where it's 5 minutes 11, and it's just a bit repetitive, I think, like, so yeah, for me it would get an 8 out of 10. It was released like in like the UK like as a single, and it got to #3, so yeah, that's Voulez-Vous, would get an 8 out of 10.
I believe in angels.
Third track in is I Have a Dream. Now, I quite like how this is sequenced like on the album. You like you've got two very upbeat songs to kick it off, and then this one, the pace just kind of drops, which I suppose is like needed like at this point like on the album. This is a very kind of folky ballad, with Frida taking like the lead vocal, very kind of hopeful and sort of like optimistic lyrics, like I have a dream, a song to sing to help me cope with anything. If you see the wonder of a fairy tale, you can take the future even if you fail. So it's very hopeful lyrics and that. And I mean, I do like cheesy songs sometimes, but I do have to say, particularly like the last verse when like the children's choir comes in, it's a bit much for me, to be honest. It's a step too far, I think. And it's not an ABBA song which I would ever really go to. It's really nice when it's on the album, and it was one of their biggest singles like as well, like internationally. Like it was released like as a Christmas single, like towards the end like of 1979. So yeah, like a big like international hit, but for me, like not one of my favourite like ABBA songs, I have to say. Okay, fourth track in is Angel Eyes. Now this one, like at the time, it's like sort of like the writing of it, like it wasn't thought too highly of like by like Benny and Bjorn. They felt it was a little bit too kind of 60s kind of sounding, and I do certainly get that like with this song. It has a very kind of 60s girl group kind of feel to it. I mean, you've got some nice sort of 3-part harmony vocals like on this one here, like Bjorn like joins like Agnetha like and Frida like kind of singing this one here. But for me, it's a little bit like ABBA by numbers. It's a song which could easily have slotted on, like I would say to the rival album. So I guess even by this point, it was already sounding a little bit like out of date. It was released like as a double A side with the title track like Voulez-Vous. So like I said, it got to #3 like on like the charts. It's a good song, but again, not one of my absolute favourite top tier ABBA songs. Okay, next up is The King Has Lost His Crown, which would also get an 8 out of 10. This is a kind of Frida lead vocal. Lyrics basically about the kind of ending off a relationship and kind of the guy who's kind of messed it up. So he sort of sings so so Frida sort of sings how does it feel? I guess it hurts your pride. Tell me, my friend, how many nights you cried. And then a very dramatic chorus, So it's quite I don't say pompous, but it's got a very kind of sophisticated kind of strings on it, but it just feels a little bit middle of the road for me. It's not an exciting song by any means, this one, but it's good while it's on the album, so I would give it an 8 out of 10. Okay, flipping over the album to side 2, we get Does Your Mother Know? Now this is, I must say, not one of the most profound songs of all time, but it's just a lot of fun, It's a Bjorn lead vocal, it's his most famous kind of lead vocal on an Abba record, and it's a kind of interesting song this, in terms of how it's kind of been sort of produced and kind of arranged, It's kind of got sort of it's kind of half a kind of disco song, but also half a kind of sort of old kind of rock and roll sort of style song. So you've got kind of harder edge kind of sounding guitars along with some kind of very interesting kind of use of synthesizers. It's a very catchy song, a very fun song, but very inconsequential as well, really meaningless kind of thing, but it's just fun though. So it was a number 4 hit here in the UK too, and I would be giving it an 8 out of 10. Okay, next up is another favourite of mine on the album. It's If It Wasn't For The Night. Now this one, whether you were making the album, was one of the first kind of bursts of inspiration they had. Lyrically, it essentially deals with a kind of distressing kind of situation of kind of someone sitting home alone and staring at a wall, goes one of the lines and that. So I guess it was perhaps inspired by Bjorn and Agnetha's impending breakup. So it's got this kind of classic thing what Abba do, very kind of quite sad and quite down lyrics, but teamed with a kind of very happy music, which is just the kind of thing what appeals to me. Now this song was originally intended as the lead-off single on the album, and they actually did some live TV performances of it, for in the UK, in Japan towards the end of '78. However, that was until Chiquitita came along and became became the album's lead-off single. For me, I love this song, but what keeps me from giving it a 10 out of 10 is the length. Again, it's 5 minutes 13, and it just goes on a little bit too long for me. It kind of, I think if it had a bridge or another bit to the song, I think it would justify that length. But I think it would have just been a lot tighter. I think had it been maybe say 3 or 4 minutes long personally, and that would have been an easy 10 out of 10. So I'm knocking it down a point for that. So it would get a 9 out of 10 overall. Okay, and now we get the album's lead-off single, and possibly the biggest song on the album, Chiquitita. This was a kind of last-minute single, basically, recorded for the United Nations Year of the Child sort of benefit, and it basically replaced If It Wasn't For The Night as the lead-off single. It's a soft ballad, this one, which kind of builds up to a euphoric and celebratory sounding chorus with lyrics what are quite similar, I guess, in theme to I Have a Dream. Very kind of comforting songs, the chorus goes Chiquitita, you and I know how the heartaches come and they go and the scars they're leaving. You'll be dancing once again and your pain will end. You will have no time for grieving. It sings so very kind of upbeat, very kind of feel good, lifts you up kind of chorus, I think. Apparently the kind of production and arrangements on the verses on this are kind of inspired by Simon and Garfunkel's song El Condor Pasa, so it's got this kind of very kind of calm, folky kind of feel feel to like the verses, and then like I said, the chorus very euphoric, and the kind of piano coda is one of my favourite musical passages like in like the ABBA catalogue. So yeah, a really good song this. It only managed number 2 like in like the UK. It was kept off the top spot by Blondie's Heart of Glass, which I would probably say like on balance like is like a better song, but this is still a great track, and still like even to this day like all royalties from this actually go towards UNICEF. So yeah, a really good song there. Would get a 9 out of 10 for me. Okay, and then the penultimate track is Lovers Live a Little Longer. Now, this is probably the closest the album, I guess, comes to kind of like a fillery song. You know, it's a bit, yeah, again, quite middle of the road sort of thing. A kind of softly sung verse, like by Frida, and then a more kind of aggressive, kind of punchy chorus. I guess what kind of keeps me from liking this, I guess, is like the lyrics, which just don't really, they're very wordy, like they're kind of very crammed in, like a lot, like into like the lyrics on this. It's basically about a kind of like, it talks about like having like read like the paper and then seeing like this study that kind of, yeah, like lovers like live a little longer. So it's very kind of clunkily written, like I like would say. And then the kind of vocals on like the chorus, like in particular, sound very shrill and kind of like they sing them very much like the top, like off like their register. But it's got a kind of, it's a good production again, very kind of swaggery strings, quite disco-y sort of feel to it. But yeah, like a little bit forgettable though. So yeah, Lovers Live a Little Longer would get a 7 out of 10. Okay, and then the album closes with Kisses of Fire, which is a brilliant closing track. Again, it starts off very slow, this one here, with a kind of softly sung, kind of very like angelic vocal performance like from like Agnetha, and then suddenly the song picks up a gear, and then you get this great glorious chorus about, yeah, like riding higher than the sky, and there is fire in every kiss, and just like those lyrics and like their vocals just kind of go hand in hand to make a really like great song. A kind of, yeah, very kind of I guess kind of flirty vibe to this one here, very kind of a bit more mature, I guess, than perhaps some of like their earlier songs, like about kind of like love and like romance, like I guess. But this song just closes the album like on like a real high, like with like that like infectious chorus. So yeah, Kisses of Fire, a great song, would get a 9 out of 10. Okay, so overall this album would score 83%, so I think this is a really great album here from a band arguably like at like the peak like of like their like success like and like sort of like powers. I would say it's probably not my favourite in their discography. I think well, I kind of say that I think you know this is a very consistent album, you know, like as like you've seen there, no song on here scores lower than a 7, but there's probably albums off theirs where I think there's better highlights, but then they also have 1 or 2 bad songs, you know, like there's no bad songs on this album. So I think for kind of consistency, this is a very strong album throughout. But I think personally, you know, for me, this album does kind of lack, I guess, kind of ultimate top tier, like ABBA songs. Like, as you've seen there, like, I'm only giving one song a 10 out of 10. But kind of conversely, I suspect there's many others who think this is ABBA's best album. But I do think it would have helped, I think, if they had included Summer Night City. I think I would have been giving that song, like, a 10 out of 10, and then they also recorded around the same time as this Gimme Gimme Gimme, which is again one of their all-time classics, although I guess that song I think was actually recorded after the album, so yeah, would have been impossible to like include. But just kind of speaking like hypothetically, if that song had been on here, this again would have elevated the album like up like quite a fair bit. But no, a great record here, and yeah, I'd be interested to know your thoughts on it, like in like the comments below. If you've got any requests for future reviews, also please leave them down below, and I'll see you all next time for the next video. Goodbye.